You probably already know this story. On a dark, rainy night in 1816, 18-year-old Mary Godwin, better known as Mary Shelley, and her future husband, Percy Shelley, visited Lord Byron in the Switzerland Alps. They amused themselves by reading ghost stories. Then Byron proposed that they each write a ghost story of their own. Mary began writing a short story, but with Percy's encouragement, she expanded the story into a novel. And Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, was published in 1818. If you read that book and seen the 1931 Frankenstein movie, you know that there are some differences, as usually there are with movies that are adapted from books. The first movie did well, so they made a sequel and used some of the storyline from the original book. Boris Karloff returns as the monster. Colin Clive is back as Dr. Henry Frankenstein. His name was Victor in the book, but was renamed Henry for the movie because they thought the name Victor would sound too severe and unfriendly for American audiences. And there were some filming problems with Colin because he was a pretty severe alcoholic. Valerie Hobson plays Elizabeth, the fiancée of Dr. Frankenstein. Ernest Thesiger is Dr. Pretorius. And Elsa Lanchester plays both Mary Shelley in the movie opening and as the bride. The movie is only around 75 minutes long. It opens with Mary Shelley and her friends discussing her Frankenstein book, and she reveals that there was more to that story and proceeds to tell it. Unlike the book, at the end of the Frankenstein movie, the monster was hunted down and seems to have died in a fire. In the sequel, the monster has survived the fire. He kills one guy and a woman sees him and runs off to warn the others. Dr. Frankenstein has recovered remarkably well from any injuries after being thrown off a windmill by his monster. He goes and visits the lab of his former mentor, Dr. Pretorius. Pretorius shows the doctor several miniature humans that he's created, but he wants to work with Dr. Frankenstein to make a mate for the monster, who reluctantly agrees. He tells Pretorius that he needs fresher body parts, and Pretorius assures him that this isn't a problem. Pretorius has employed a couple of criminals in the past and hires them to kill someone for fresh parts, which isn't too unbelievable. Medical schools used to buy cadavers from grave robbers who a few times even killed some people for the bodies. The monster saves a woman from drowning. Her screams upon seeing the monster alert two hunters who shoot and injure him. The monsters raise a mob that sets out in pursuit. Captured and tied to a pole, the monster is hauled to a dungeon and chained up. He breaks his chains, overpowers the guards, and escapes into the woods. That night, the monster encounters an old blind hermit who thanks God for sending him a friend. He teaches the monsters words like friend and good. And this is the first kindness the monster's ever gotten. Most people would see him and then immediately try and kill him. This blind man had no idea how he looked. He was lonely and thought the monster was mute, so he welcomed them in. They break bread together, drinking wine and smoking. Then the hermit begins playing music and the monster is overjoyed by all of this. Then two lost hunters stumble upon the cottage and recognize the monster. They attack him, and after a fight, the monster escapes. Taking refuge in a crypt, the monster spies Pretorius and his henchmen breaking open a grave. The henchmen depart as Pretorius has supper, which is a strange place for dinner, but why not? The monster reveals himself, eats some of the food, and learns that Pretorius plans to create a mate for him. Dr. Frankenstein and Elizabeth are visited by Pretorius. He now refuses to assist Pretorius, who calls for the monster. The monster demands the doctor's help, to no avail. Pretorius orders the monster out, secretly signaling him to kidnap Elizabeth. Pretorius guarantees her safe return upon his participation. Dr. Frankenstein goes to his laboratory and, despite himself, grows excited over his work. After being assured of Elizabeth's safety, he completes the bride's body. The makeup for this movie was done by Jack Pierce, who also did the makeup for the original movie. He worked with the director James Whale on her look. Her hairstyle was based on Nefertiti, an ancient Egyptian queen. Then given a Marcel wave, sometimes called a finger wave or a perm. They also put her on stilts to make her taller. And the bride actually has red hair, but because it's a black and white movie, it looks black, and that's the rendition of her you see in most art pieces. A storm rages as final preparations are made to bring the bride to life. Her body is raised through the roof where electricity is harnessed from lightning to animate her. The doctor lowers her, and after realizing she's alive, they remove her bandages and help her to stand. The monster comes down the steps after killing one of the henchmen on the rooftop and sees his mate. The monster reaches out to her and the bride rejects him. The monster says that she hates him like the others and rampages through the lab, destroying everything. Then he puts his hand on this wooden lever coming out of the wall, and Dr. Frankenstein yells at him to get away from that lever.
Look out! The lever! Get away from that lever! You'll blow us all to atoms!
Just a side note, so Dr. Frankenstein is a man of means. He has wealth and great intellect. He has this castle where he builds a high-tech laboratory, and when he's done, he looks around and says, okay, I've got these cool electronics and a machine that can be raised to the sky and capture lightning. I've got my medical tools and all these chemicals to help reanimate the dead. Now, what's missing? Oh yeah, a lever that anyone can pull that will blow the entire castle up. Did he really need that? I don't know much about laboratories. Maybe they all have these levers installed in them. The monster pauses and tells Dr. Frankenstein and Elizabeth,
Go! You live! Go! You stay. We belong dead.
So themes like man playing God, hubris, nature versus nurture are some of the themes of this movie and book. But ultimately, I think love and friendship may be the ultimate themes. If Dr. Frankenstein had not abandoned his creation, none of this would have happened. This creature was kind of a monster, but not monstrous. Most people who looked at him were horrified and tried to kill him, but someone showed him kindness and he was this gentle creature. There was a point in the first movie where he comes across a little girl throwing flowers in the water, and he thinks that pretty things are meant for the water, and he throws her in. Which is a pretty monstrous act, but he just didn't know better. His creator, this godlike figure or a father figure, just abandoned him. Even calling his creation to its face a fiend, an ogre, a demon, and leaving the rest of society to deal with those consequences. Plenty has been written on love and whether it's a real thing or is it just a quick release of dopamine that just doesn't last. And a lot of the early monster movies have this sort of love story theme where the creature craves companionship. And there's a 90s song by Everclear where it says, we can live beside the ocean, leave the fire behind, swim out past the breakers, watch the world die. Which seems to be what a lot of these monsters in these movies are looking for, to just go out into the woods or someplace quiet with someone they love, just leave society where everyone's trying to hurt them and live a happy life with someone else. And there are a billion songs about love, but in the end, most of these creatures never succeed in finding it. They usually get beat up or killed by some other guy who ends up getting the girl. So maybe a more apt song for these creatures and monsters would be the Jay Giles Band, a song from the 80s called Love Stinks. And it starts with, you love her, but she loves him, and he loves somebody else, you just can't win. And so it goes till the day you die. This thing they call love, it's gonna make you cry. I've had the blues, the reds, and the pinks, one thing for sure.
Friend?
Love stinks. Good night. Boo.